There's something about the original photograph that has this sort of energy or aura of the original person that I think is being transferred into the painting itself. We're always trying to understand someone else as a way of understanding ourselves. And so I think that even though these family photographs are not our own family photographs, there's still this sort of universal aspect of humanness that comes across.
The way that Daisy works is she uses these black and white found photographs as almost a map to guide the painting process. She mostly paints over them, but she leaves a few passages bare. I find these moments of exposure quite tender. It is a gesture of healing and love that she's taking these photographs and lovingly painting over them.
Anthropologist Michael Taussig talks about sacred objects being shocked back into being when they're being defaced. And so I think of the family photograph in that context, where it is an object that is ubiquitous, but by defacing them in a particular way, suddenly they're piercing and present again. We're sort of honoring them in a way that the original image intended.
Daisy has selected American photography from the 20th century with these funerary parlors, and it really represents the funeral industry that is very much couched in commodities and commodification. We actually are sort of invited to enter into this almost surreal world, and we take the place of the mourners. It really seemed the CU Art Museum as an academic museum, the appropriate location to have conversations about death and mourning. Previously, during the Victorian era, the emphasis was really placed on the body, not on all the elaborate trappings that surrounded the body. Fast forward into the 20th century, the body is almost subsumed by all these kind of funerary trappings, and in a way, it distances us from the death process. Now, I do see a desire to have a conversation about how do we die feeling connected to this world.
I'm really looking at photographs from the perspective of Roland Barthes talking about punctum. And for him, punctum is something that pierces him when he looks at a photograph. I'm collecting these abandoned family photographs. There's a very particular process in terms of how I'm selecting the images. It has to be this sort of almost falling in love with them. The gardener has also hinted me towards this garden show that I'll be doing with Kate Contemporary. I'm looking at how we think of the garden or how we think of nature and how figures are sort of encircled and trapped or part of the scene. Pattern is another sort of toolkit within this element of defacement. It will underline relationships that are already existing within the photograph itself. So for example, in the painting Leonard 5746, I'm intervening by incorporating pattern that emerges from that field of daisies and then encircles and underlines the relationship of these women together.
I do think it's really interesting the way she employs the flowering motifs. She'll take a wallpaper design and she brings it into the forefront, so it's not pattern anymore. The pattern has been unleashed, and so I think it plays a very disruptive role, but it also plays a guiding role. It leads your eye around certain passages. When I first encountered Daisy's work, I was struck by the color. She is a painter that is unapologetic about the way she uses color and pattern, and that really appealed to me.
When I'm working with colors, I'm thinking about one particular color that I am then building a color scheme around. And so there's this sort of balance that's happening. It's almost like when you're cooking and you have to add a little bit of like a lemon to sort of make things pop.
I would say Daisy's work fits into contemporary art practice because I think there is a resurgence of figurative painting, especially, that combines figuration and abstraction.
When you think about a photograph, it's of a split second. Barth talks about photography as a representation of death, death of a moment. Whereas with painting, time almost doesn't exist. And so I like the idea of elongating the moment that the photograph initially represented with paint.